everybody. Welcome to another episode of Positive Parenting with Astrology. I am your host and resident Gemini, Maria Riegger, and today we're talking about, in keeping with the Pluto and Aquarius transit, education disruption, specifically alternatives to traditional schooling models, including homeschooling and unschooling. I have another Gemini here with me today, so I'm not the only Gemini in this studio. Stephanie Eige, who is a coach and an advocate for homeschooling, unschooling, and educational alternatives. Now, before I get into the interview part of this segment, I just want to point out that we are, now that Pluto, the planet Pluto, has transitioned into the sign of Aquarius, putting us more further into the age of Aquarius. Now, remember, Aquarius is the revolutionary sign. Under modern astrology, it's ruled by the planet Uranus, which is a very fiery, brings a fiery evolutionary energy, radical change-oriented energy to the planet. So there's been a lot of talk in the astrological community recently about all the tech disruptions that are consistent with this transit, Pluto and Aquarius and the age of Aquarius. Of course, with social media and AI, that's all over the place. Today, we're specifically addressing these disruptions in education. A lot of parents, including Stephanie and me, are realizing that traditional, more rules and authoritarian-based educational structures based on behavior modification and focusing on grades and things like that are outdated and are not well suited to, not only not well suited to all kids, but not well suited to fostering an environment of learning and a motivation to learn. And more parents are using different types of educational modalities, some of which we'll talk to today, to educate their kids and prepare them for adulthood. So we're going to talk about all of that. But first, I want to welcome Stephanie. And it's great to be with you today. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. For all the listeners out there, I'm getting over some illness, so excuse the scratchy voice and the occasional coughs, but I am very excited to be here and share educational empowerment because I feel like everybody needs to feel empowered to make their own choices. And there are lots and lots of choices out there.
Absolutely. And that can get a little bit overwhelming for parents. I know it was overwhelming for me. On the one hand, I'm thrilled that we have these educational options. I recently learned, now that my son is a freshman in high school, I think I mentioned this to you, Stephanie, last time we talked, about these dual enrollment programs now with local community colleges where students can do dual enrollment with high school and the local community colleges to end up with an associate's degree by the time they're 17 or 18. My point is, you're not forced to go at a pace that's too slow for you. You have options. That's just one example, but they can be overwhelming. That's the other issue that parents are having is, what do I do? What's the right choice? But before we get too much into that, I want you to tell our listeners how old your kids are and how you got to work in this space. Like, what was your journey to realizing that these were the types of educational structures that you kind of wanted to use to educate your kids and prepare them for adulthood?
So it started, well, first of all, my son is 17. He'll be 18 in March. And my daughter is 16. She'll be 17 in July. So when I first realized that we needed to get out of the educational system, they were respected. They finished second grade and third grade in the public school system. The year before that, I had considered taking them out of school. But like most people, I was overwhelmed because I wasn't exactly sure what to do, didn't know what the rules were, didn't know where to start looking. My son was going to be in an all gifted and talented class that next year. And so I said, okay, everybody loved this particular teacher. It's going to work now. Things are going to start to get better, because what I was seeing was a loss of love of learning. And like, there was just this dimness coming to both of the kids that my daughter suddenly didn't feel good every morning before school, but then the teachers would assure me everything's fine. She's great when she's here. But like every single day, she didn't want to go to, she was basically telling me she didn't want to go. And I wasn't picking up on it. it took me a while to figure it out. And my son was coming home every day, even in the gifted and talented class, where his teacher loved him, saying, I can't be myself. I don't want to go. I don't. And, it's like, it's not supposed to be that way. Um, I come from a background, I was public school educated. My husband was. We didn't have any issues. Um, my mother was a teacher and a principal, and my mother-in-law was a teacher. So it never occurred to me to do anything different until I just, every day, I was like, my heart hurt for my kids and that I was sending them someplace they didn't want to be. We were fighting over homework. Like everything was a struggle. And I'm that like, this is not what it's supposed to be like. Like, I didn't have kids to have all these problems because of something outside of our family. So I got brave that summer. I just did a little quick search. I found an online program. I did all the registration, everything I needed to do. I didn't tell anybody. And when it was all said and done, and I had pulled them out of public school, I shared the news with my husband, who was a little shocked. And I don't recommend not sharing things with your husband. Um, I knew that I would get talked out of it if I let him make that decision in the very beginning. And he was like, okay, well, I trust you. I trust your judgment. You're the one that's home with the kids. You're the one that knows, what they should be doing. So we did that. I told my mom, who, was a retired principal, and she looked sick to her stomach. I thought she was going to throw up right there in front of me, but I knew in my heart it was the right thing. And so we got started. We did the online program. It was a very good transition from going from public school to a form of home education. It took some of the pressure off at first because I had teachers technically helping them. They just got to do the work on their own time. But I would say I learned probably within about 2 months that it wasn't going to be the thing that we were going to do continuing forward. Again, great transition. But then I found a micro school. And so there were like 6 kids in each of the kids' classes. It was very specialized. They did subjects, but it was personalized to each individual student. They went 2 days a week for like 4 hours. And that was great. It was a great school. But I also learned all of the homeschool things that we had been doing were on the days of that the school was meeting. And we weren't doing all that fun stuff that we had done the year before. And so I decided we were going to do something different, but I had no idea what it was going to be. And that was in November. So like after Thanksgiving, they didn't go back to school. And I was like, I'll figure it out. Well, about a week later, my husband took a job that was going to move us to another state, which is where we are now. And we had to pack up the house and stage it to sell. And that's kind of how our unschooling journey began, because all of these books, and I was like, well, there's no point in starting a program here because we know we're leaving. I just don't want to like buy something and force them to do workbooks. So we're going to just make decisions after we move. And I started researching more and more on types of homeschooling. And I didn't even know of the word unschooling at that time. I'd never heard of it. I just knew that what we were doing was working and that we were just playing and having fun and going on trips all the time and traveling around the state and just really enjoying things. And the kids were just like super happy. And by the time we moved and got settled in our house, I was like, we're not going back. We're not going back to this forced kind of system, even though it was more relaxed because we were at home and doing it on our own terms. I did for like 6 months. I had a math tutor come to the house until they were like, Mom, I just really don't want to do this anymore. Like this, I'm not enjoying it. It's just not fun. Like I already know how to add and subtract and multiply and use a calculator. Like why do I have to do this? So I was like, okay, we won't, let's see what comes our way. So I had them in some science programs and we had homeschool meetups and We would do activities with other homeschooling families, and we were just having a great time. And that's kind of where I learned about unschooling. And that's also where I fell into learning about respectful parenting. It kind of all happened naturally and organically at the same time, because what I was finding is the kids knew that they had trust in their parents. They knew that they could ask questions and they weren't going to get in trouble. And they started really questioning a lot of things, like, well, why do I have to do that? And I couldn't answer their questions. Well, why can I not just do this? Or why is this? And I was like, I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good reason, because I said, my answer comes from, this is what I was told, and I never thought to question it. And now you're questioning me, and now I'm questioning it. So I went on this journey of self-discovery that really was, my kids were the catalyst for. Like, they made me question everything in my life. And
That's great.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that they did, because
Yeah.
I started just like looking for different ways of doing things. And I found some people online that were doing the same kinds of things. And I did this year-long mentorship program with someone that has been doing it for 20 years and is an advocate and helps other people. And by the time that year was over, like, our family was transformed. We were a different family in a healthier and better place than I even knew was possible. Like, I genuinely didn't know it could be like that. And it's just progressively gotten better and better, because we just question the norms and we look for the answer that works for us instead of letting other people tell us what to do. And that's why I use empowerment, because my exact journey isn't going to be somebody else's exact journey. People are going to get to their own place that's the best for their family in their own way. And you just need to feel empowered to be able to do that and make those choices, because you're going to be questioned. You're going to have people ask you, well, shouldn't they be doing this? And shouldn't they be doing that? And once you have the confidence, because you see what's happening, those questions don't hurt. They don't get to you anymore. For in the beginning, I would be worried all the time. Well, maybe I'm not really doing the right thing and this isn't the right choice. But I just kept believing in it, and I kept trusting in my children,
Right.
and it all came together.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah.
It's so heartening to hear that you had the presence of mind to kind of detach yourself and think, well, maybe there's more I can learn here
Yes.
myself, right?
Yeah.
Because that I come across parents who they can't get out of that mindset that, well, this is how I was taught, this is how I was raised, this is how it is. But have you ever really thought about
Yeah.
if that conditioning is helpful or healthy, or
Yeah.
and because I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who were raised like I was, with this idea that, oh, you get the best grades, you get in the best college, and you're set for life. Well, guess what? I got the best grades. I graduated top of my class. I did all these achievements. And at the age of like 30 something, I was like, well, why did I not feel fulfilled? I was promised fulfillment. I was
Right.
promised
No.
happiness. And then that creates, you have this kind of almost like a, um, existential crisis.
Yeah.
Like, that was a lie.
Yeah.
And it was. Sit
Like, what
down,
was
do
I
what you're
doing?
told, and you will have a hell happy
Yeah.
life. No,
No, no,
it
no,
worked
no.
out, right? So, I mean, I could go into a lot of different tangents with this, including the traditional schooling model based on rules based authoritarian
Yeah.
model. I've come across several studies that have indicated that have linked authoritarian parenting with lower self-esteem and self-confidence in adults later,
Yeah,
and have linked
absolutely.
respectful parenting, authoritative parenting, and even permissive parenting, which is emotionally responsive but undemanding. Those styles of parenting have been linked with higher self-esteem, higher self-confidence, lower rates of alcohol and drug use in teens and young adults,
Yeah.
because it empowers kids to make
Yes.
the decisions for themselves.
That's
So,
just it. They're
yeah,
getting the practice to do it. That's the
right.
difference, is they can
Yes.
practice it now when they're still at home and they're still safe. And yes, there may be some consequences, depending on what those decisions are,
Right.
but they're still within their safety net. And
Absolutely.
so by the time they do go out on their own, they don't they are confident. They do trust in themselves and they believe in themselves and they know that they're capable because
Right.
they've been doing it all along. And that's something that I really see. I notice a difference with my kids, and some of their friends that are more traditionally schooled. They're not as used to making decisions for themselves, and they kind of don't know how to. So and they'll get it, they'll get there. It's just gonna take them longer. But
Right.
boy, my kids, they are very decisive. They know
Oh yeah.
exactly what they want. They know how to ask for it. Um,
Right.
it's amazing. It's
Well, that's
just
the thing. If they don't flex those muscles, those decision
yeah,
making muscles, they're not going to be able to use them. And I would rather, and I tell parents this all the time, I think, we would rather our kids make mistakes when they're at home with us and can
yes,
and have ready access to our guidance than make
yes.
those. They're going to make mistakes later too. We're all, shoot, I still make mistakes, and in my
Right,
40s, right?
right.
But but my point is, to your point, Stephanie, like the more they practice the decision making at home with the parents, the more
Yeah.
they can benefit from the parents'
And the
guidance.
more resilient
Yeah,
they are when they do make a decision
absolutely.
that didn't go the way that they wanted it to.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And it's, we want to protect our kids from harm and suffering. We hate seeing our kids go through any type of emotional pain. We hate it.
yeah,
However, we cannot protect them from that forever. They
right.
have to learn to be resilient. And I always quote Gabor Mate here. Kids are not traumatized because they are hurt. Kids are traumatized when they are alone with the hurt. So
Yes,
our presence is the antidote to that type of trauma
yes. And
that
and
will
it is
provide
hard.
them the resilience. Yep.
It is hard to watch them when something doesn't go the way that they wanted it
Oh
to.
yeah.
They're disappointed, but just learning to let them sit with those feelings, like they have to work through the feelings. They need
Right.
that practice, and that doesn't mean to say that we don't comfort them, but we can't fix it. So we're there, like you said, we're
Right.
present with them,
And we can
giving you the
ask,
feeling.
hey, would you like me to get involved here?
Yeah,
Would you like me to? And if they say no, as tempting as it may be to step
yeah,
in, I just like, okay, well, I'm here if you need me to.
yeah,
Or if it's, there are times a parent may have to step in. That's something I work with parents on. It's hard to know. So, but you can tell your kids, look, if you don't handle this or you don't talk to so and so, I'm going to do it because this is too important. This cannot go unaddressed.
yeah,
Most of the issues are not that extreme, but
right,
there may be something that's happening that you have to get involved. But and then it's a safe because it's a safety issue.
right,
But
exactly.
but most of the time, um, you can let them handle it, and they may, like you said, there may be consequences. But that's part of education, is
Right.
learning the consequences from action and inaction.
Well, and
Right.
learning to, there's not necessarily one right way to do it.
Yeah.
So maybe they don't approach it in the way that I would have, but that doesn't matter. The outcome, they're going to get the outcome that they're looking for if they do it their way or if they do it my way. Their way may be harder. They may not want to hear the suggestions from our life experience to make it easier,
Hmm.
but I remember I just for myself, I wanted to do it my way because that's how I learned. And it's okay if I maybe took 5 more steps than necessary. Now I know for the next time, and I did it on my own. And
Right.
that was always the most important thing to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just remembering that,
We
like
know better. I mean, most parents know better. We have more years of life experience. We
exactly,
do.
just by
But
default.
yes, but that doesn't mean that we should not let our kids be in the driver's seat
Right.
and make their own decisions. Like you said, that's how they learn. And sometimes I remember having that experience in my family. My mother was very engulfing and overparenting. And I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me do it. Is more important that I do this myself, than that it be done perfectly.
Right.
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 So yeah. And I
And
wanted to bring
sometimes
up, go
I
ahead. Sorry,
I might
Stephanie, go
say,
ahead.
"Can I suggest something?" And sometimes they'll say, "Sure." And sometimes they say no, and that can be really hard when to just step back and, "Are you sure you don't wanna hear my suggestion?"
I know.
They say no, and
Yeah.
I want people to respect my no, so I have to respect theirs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Boundaries is a whole nother issue
Yes.
I'll
You're
work with for a
right.
whole nother episode. Um, But, I often, because you talked about not forcing your kids to go to school when clearly it was not working for them.
Right.
And I love that because I've heard from many parents, usually they're like maybe a little older than us with older kids. Well, force your kids to go to school because at some point they have to go to a 9 to 5 job. They're going to be forced to go to a 9 to 5 job. They're going to have to do that. And they're going to have a boss that tells them what to do. And I'm like, wait, no,
No,
not necessarily. They
if
could
that's
be an
not
entrepreneur. They could have a flexible schedule.
exactly
I'm an attorney. I work remote.
right. That like
My job mostly remote.
it's such an outdated way of
Totally.
thinking.
And
And
the idea that
this,
you
it,
have to suffer through life,
right. And
you don't.
the thing that I think the thing that most people struggle with that say those types of things, like force them to do it because they're going to have to anyway, and blah blah blah. They are not in a place where they are wanting to self-reflect because they would have to question their entire life. And if they have to question their life, then they have to question the decisions that their parents made and that their grandparents made and that so and so made. And it takes a lot of work and it's hard. And, when you get to the other side, it's well worth it. But that is not to say that I did not have a lot of tearful moments going through that process. I still go through it. I mean, there things will come up every once in a while that make you question what you knew. And one of the things I've had to learn is, like my parents are baby boomer generation. And, they grew up differently than I did. And so sometimes the things that come out of their mouth it's just their conditioning. Once you get past, I think I've heard it's like age 55 or something. If you haven't started doing a lot of work before that, it's much, much more difficult. And so you really have to give them some grace and realize that they're like they have a wounded inner child themselves that they've not reparented. And you kind of just have to let some things go, even though it can be frustrating. But I feel like I'm a Gen Xer. I feel like, we became more open than our parents did. And I know that the generations, like millennials are more open than even the Gen Xers. I really feel like our kids' generation, things are going to be so different. I just don't think those types of things are not going to be coming out of their mouths because we are changing the way that the world works. Yes, there are a lot of people still stuck in an old-fashioned paradigm, but there are so many more of us now that are questioning things, and we are forcing people to reflect and think about the world differently. And I really am hopeful because I feel like my generation, like we're raising our kids differently. Millennials are raising their kids differently. And we're gonna make a breakthrough. Like I feel
Oh
it.
yeah.
Like I believe it
Yeah,
wholeheartedly. So I'm
absolutely.
just holding on. I'm here to push those boundaries and make people stop and think. And I get some looks sometimes, from people when they'll be like, well, ask me a question and I give them an answer that they aren't expecting. And I'm, just confident in my answer. And sometimes usually they just back away because they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't want to think about that right now. So,
Yeah.
um, you know,
Yeah,
we're,
for
we're
sure.
doing it. Our kids are going to do it. It's going to be
No, for
awesome.
sure. And that's one of the good things about the internet and social media is that kids have access to information.
Yeah.
It's good and bad, clearly. But like my kid is light years ahead of where I was, like in terms of emotional development at this
Yes.
age. Like he knows
Yes.
what gaslighting is. He can identify toxic behavior. He knows what traits he needs to stay away from. He can defend himself. He can advocate for himself. Things
Yeah.
I could not do as a teenager, or could not do most of the
Well,
time.
I,
So it's wonderful to see that. I think I'm Gen Xers. We're the generation that's the first generation raising totally digital kids.
yeah.
We're not going to get it 100% right. I don't. But
Right.
so sometimes like you, I question, oh, maybe I'm doing this wrong. But then I think, you know what? This is all part of the journey.
Yep.
And this is just, I'm going to roll with this.
Right. And no person's existence is perfect. But
Yeah.
that's what makes everything beautiful. Like, it's the beautiful imperfection is I can't think of the way you say it, but um I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't had some bumps in the road early on for myself. They have helped me get to this place where I am now. For example, and I kind of like I forget about it, but I I questioned things as a teenager, but for the most part, the adults, were annoyed that I was questioning things. But I remember I was about 20 years old and I went back to my hometown to visit and I ran into a parent of a girl that I danced with. And she told me, she said, "Stephanie, I just wanted to tell you, I always appreciated how you spoke your mind." And nobody had ever like acknowledged me and told me that that was a good thing before because I would end up being in trouble for things like back talking,
Hmm.
but all I was doing was genuinely asking a question because I
Right.
didn't understand why what was happening was happening.
Right.
And that like has resonated with me. I am about to turn 50 this year and I still remember that.
Well, you look great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I didn't
Thank you
think
so
you were that
much.
old at all.
But, I made mistakes too that I think have helped me now that, I didn't really realize it until later. My parents told me I had to go to college. So I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to beauty school. They didn't want, I wanted to do that in high school, but I wasn't allowed to do that because that's not what like my people, did. We didn't do that. So I went to college, didn't want to be there. I took one final. I didn't even go to my other classes. I totally flunked out. I did meet my husband and we're still together. We married 30 years this year, so I did get something out of it. So maybe them forcing me, that's why I was supposed to be forced to go. But, I wasn't ready to be there. I didn't that wasn't the choice that I wanted to make. And so I think that has helped me also with my kids and letting them make their own choices. I went back to college. I have a master's degree, but I went after I was married and I was ready to go on my own. Like, and I wanted to be there. I think I started back when I was like 23 or 24. And I did get to go to beauty school. I
That's
did go to
awesome.
beauty school
That's
after
awesome.
I flunked out. And it was great because I really enjoyed it. And that was my job when I went to college. I could make my own hours. I, made money doing something that I enjoyed, still went to college because I wanted to do that too, but I did it on my own terms. And I guess that's like where I like to really help people is helping people find their own inner confidence to do things on their own terms, even if
Mhm.
nobody else agrees with you. As
Right.
long as you're not hurting yourself or other people, it's nobody's business. Like, why do you care how I want to do this?
Exactly.
You are not
Exactly.
me. So
Yeah,
just
what works for me may not work for you and vice
exactly.
versa, and that's fine.
Yep.
That's how it is.
Yep.
I want to make sure I ask you because we were talking a little bit about unschooling, your
Yes.
homeschooling. And I know when I was a kid, I thought of homeschooling as usually it was the mom that was doing it. The kids would be home and the mom would be doing like instruction, right?
Right, right,
And would be handling everything. So
right.
when I thought about becoming a parent later in my 20s, I thought, oh, I could never homeschool because I have to work, so I can't do both, right?
Yeah.
But now, of course, with all the access to the online courses, there are all types of different ways you can structure this. Like you could have back, during COVID when I was doing some research on this, you could just hire a course and you can. It's a self-paced course, like you were, I think, hinting at, where the kids can do that and then they send things in to be graded. So the parents kind of manage it, but aren't doing the actual
Right.
instruction, right? So
So
that's something. So what other, I guess, types of homeschooling structures would
yeah,
exist to support parents
there
like
are there are infinite ways to homeschool.
that? Hmm.
And I use homeschool like to encompass everything because I think it's easier for people to understand. Um, we are unschoolers. Unschoolers, it does not mean uneducating or like not thinking that learning and education is important. It really just means giving the choices over to the individual child slash student, if you want to call them that student. Um, every state has different homeschooling regulations. And as long as you're compliant with those regulations, you're fine. So I'm more of a facilitator, and my husband also. and by the way, I know I mentioned he wasn't sure about the homeschooling, but said he trusted me. He is 1,000,000% on board and tells people all the time that they should homeschool and unschool their kids. So that's another story for another day, but like, how you get your spouse, husband, male partner, whoever, to get on board with it. He is also transformed. So I just want to put that out there that we are unified as a family on that. But we're facilitators. So I'm not a teacher. I don't sit around with books and teach my kids anything. And I haven't done that except for that first year when we did the online program and they needed some help. And I tried to do it and it was terrible. Like it was just, if you try to do that,
It's hard.
it doesn't work. Like it doesn't. If you have like an open relationship with your kids where they can, like if your kids are just used to you telling them that they have to do something, and then maybe they do it and maybe it all works out for everybody. But my kids have never been like that. Even before like this whole journey, they, definitely were spirited, which I love. So it will serve them as adults. Sometimes it's
Oh
hard
yeah.
raising.
No, I always say, man, if your kids are advocating for themselves and telling you
Yep.
no and standing up for themselves, it's going to be better for them as adults. That's actually
Absolutely.
what you want. That's
Absolutely.
actually what you want. And kids, teenagers especially, are hardwired not to listen to parents. That
Yep.
is a developmental thing.
It
You have to
absolutely.
just accept that and roll with it. And like you said, let them do it their way. And then later you could ask them, so how do you think about how that worked out? You resist the urge to judge. You're going to want to
Yes.
say, I told you so. If you
I
would listen
know.
to me,
I
you're
know.
going to want to say that. But if you can say, how'd that work out? What do you think about how that worked out? To get them to think about the consequences and whatnot,
Yes.
as opposed to, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so but it is,
Yeah.
it's
So all along,
self-advocating is they need
yes.
to be able to do that for adulthood.
So all along, like from the time that we first started through now as they're teenagers, I just would like I check in with them regularly.
Mhm.
And they now, they're kind of more settled because they're older and they kind of know what they really like and they just have kind of stuck with it. But when they were younger, we would try all kinds of different activities. If they liked it, they kept doing it. If they didn't, we took a break. They could try something else. The same thing with any type of like learning that they were interested in. If, that they wanted, I'm trying to think of something specific, but if my daughter said, oh, she went through the slime making phase like all the young girls do. Um, we just went with it. We just, whatever was interesting, I would help find either a resource, a class, a place to go, somebody else to talk to help facilitate their interests. And we would do it for as long as they wanted. When they were done, they were done.
Mhm.
Even if like a class wasn't finished, if they got everything that they needed out of it, then okay, we don't have to go to do that anymore. So that's just how I've approached everything. Um, and I've just continued to trust in that process right now. So my son started, he technically will be graduating from high school in May this year. And I say technically because he's it doesn't look like a traditional high schooler. I have him registered, we're compliant with the state. He's doing dual enrollment like you mentioned earlier. He started at 16, and has been taking college classes the last couple years. That's all he does as far as formal education. He's really involved in scouting and he has a lot of leadership positions. He has more meetings than most adults that I know. Like I'm just amazed. He plays 2 instruments. He takes Japanese. So I guess technically that he takes a Japanese class on Outschool and he has a private tutor because he likes to be busy and he likes all of these different things. He's like really getting a lot out of it. My daughter's very different. She likes to stay home. She is more introverted and shy. It takes her a long time to warm up to people and situations. Once you know her, she's great and she's very talkative, she but it just takes her a while and the new situations are uncomfortable for her. So she doesn't have all of those things, but that's her choice. I still regularly ask her, do you want to try an art class? Do you want to do this? And she's done them and over the years. But right now she's not. She's getting life skills right now. She does some things for my mom and some people that live in her condo. She is selling things online to make money because she doesn't want to go get a job yet. That's the other. My son also has a part-time job, and he loves that too. I mean, he is like crazy busy.
It's
It's
awesome.
amazing. But she's not ready. Like,
Yeah.
she's not ready to do that. She is finding ways to earn money on her own terms. I mean, I'm kind of, like, really impressed of what she's
Yeah.
doing. She is an entrepreneur. You know,
Yep.
she follows things online. She keeps up with fashion. She keeps up with real estate. And so that's how she's learning about different things. So it looks very different, but again, I'm just a facilitator. I'm here to help them find the resources to do the things that they want to do. And
Right.
that's unschooling for our family.
It's led by the kids, and what I
Yes.
love about unschooling is almost every moment is an opportunity for learning.
And it really
Like
is.
it's one of
But I
those
did have
things.
to learn you can't point it out though.
No, I agree.
When you
Hey,
start
this is a
saying
learning opportunity for you. No, just let
right.
it be and let them do the learning.
Yes.
And one of the things I love about on your website, you have a specific section on travel, and I'm always saying on this channel, travel because we love to travel, right? We have family all over.
Yeah,
Travel is one of the best methods of education because you're learning about
absolutely.
other cultures. You're getting outside of your little bubble. We live in the Washington, D.C. area, and man, it's like we love getting out of this bubble because it's very different. We learn about different things. We learn different food, different
Yeah.
sites.
Yes.
And my son has been to all these places, and now he says, "Well, I'm thinking about maybe moving here because he's been there and experienced that."
Right.
And it just opens up your mind and your world so much. Like I cannot really overemphasize that. And even if you take your kids someplace and they seem like they're, especially teenagers, they seem like they're not into it, they are getting something
They're
out of it. I
getting something
promise
out of
you.
it.
They're
Yes.
just too cool to say, "Oh, this is great, mom and dad.
Right.
Thanks so much for doing this. I'm having a great time." They're too cool to say that, but they
Right.
are, because then later you'll overhear them talking to somebody else about the great time they had and how
Yep.
everything was great and they want to go back, but they're not going to tell, they're not always going to express that to the parents sometimes.
Exactly.
So
And
don't think that they're not getting something out of it. They always do.
absolutely, always. Even my daughter who she's really funny. She when we travel and we wanna stop at museums and things, she's always like, "Oh, another museum," like they're just it's she's just not into it. But at the same time, I know she's getting things from it. She still walks around and looks at stuff even, if she isn't super excited. She's been exposed to something new and different. And just having seen something or heard something exists opens you up to other possibilities. And then, maybe a couple years from now, somebody's talking about, I don't know, we went to the spam museum. It was actually really cool. Somebody says something and she's like, "Oh, I've been there." So like it doesn't have to like look like all this wonderful learning is happening in every moment because it just happens naturally. It happens for them just like it does for us as adults.
Right.
We see things, we're exposed to things, and then, maybe something comes of it later and maybe something doesn't. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's because to your point about what we're talking about at the beginning of this session, like I have always loved learning, but I hated school. I hated having to go somewhere and being on somebody else's schedule. I could not go to the bathroom or get a drink of water when I wanted to. I hated that. But I
Yes.
loved learning. The stuff we read about in the textbooks, I really got into. And I've always reading several books at once because I love learning about stuff.
Yeah.
And I take classes because I love learning about stuff.
Well, and that's the
So
difference
that's,
between
yeah,
learning and forced education.
exactly.
If
So
you're forced
yeah,
into anything, you're not gonna remember it.
right,
I was a great student. I could pass a test with hardly any studying. I got straight A's all the time. But do I remember any of it? No. I learned how to take tests.
right,
And so I
exactly.
remember the things that I found interesting. All the rest of the stuff is.
That's what I tell parents whose kids are not getting A's and B's in school. I'm like, look, that first of all, it has nothing to do with how intelligent they are.
Right.
And all school is just like you said, it's, yeah, okay, you are learning some skills. So the way I look at it, it's like, don't focus so much on the grades, focus on, you are learning skills. You are learning how to manage relationships in a social environment. You are learning how to prioritize tasks, how to organize tasks, how to keep track of your schedule and things like this. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of there is going to school is a good experience for learning all those skills, right? You're gonna need to interact with other people and interact with authority figures and all this stuff, and how to communicate all these things. So those are what I think students should be focusing on, like learning those skills as
Yeah, but
opposed to just
I
getting the
would
grades.
even say though, it's not a natural environment to learn those things.
That is
That's why
true.
I feel like homeschoolers,
That is true.
not just unschoolers, but homeschoolers learn those things in a natural way because you are out in the
Yeah.
world living in the real world environment and not this constructed weird thing where
Right.
everybody
Where
is
you can't
grouped by age.
eat when you get a snack when you need to, or get a drink of water when you need. That's not
Right.
normal. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like a prison. It's kind of
It
is. Like,
is. Well, there's a
that's,
whole thing,
I
the
mean,
school to prison pipeline.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
they
So, but
look the
that's
same, they have the
right.
same kinds of rules, they have the same structure, the same
Disciplinary
authority
action,
paradigm.
punishments, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that was
it's
growing up. I like that you mentioned that, Stephanie, because growing up, I knew people who stereotypically thought, oh, homeschoolers, they don't have any interaction with the outside world. Like, no, that's not true at all. I have a lot of friends who
it's
homeschool
not.
their
That is
kids.
probably one of
They
the
have
biggest
they
misconceptions.
have communities, like you said. Like
Yes.
I think my kids get more out of seeing their parents interact in daily life outside, like we were saying, at
Mhm.
restaurants, in the mall, like at shops, whatever. That's kind of how they learn how to those skills, right?
Yep.
They don't have to go to school to learn those skills. I want to make that clear.
Right.
There may be some benefit, but yeah, that's totally. I would never. I would not want anyone to not homeschool because they were afraid of like a lack of
Right.
socialization. You could absolutely create that. The schools where we are, a lot of the private schools have like if you're a homeschooling family, you can pay a fee and the kids can do the extracurricular activities and sports
Mhm.
at the school, right? So that's another option
Yeah.
too.
And
So yeah,
right. There's we have a homeschooling family friend whose son plays football at the local high school.
right.
It's very dependent on where you live. Like I said,
That is
each
true.
state has different regulations, each county, each school, like where we are, the school, whoever the coach is for whatever the sport is, has to agree. And they may or may not, want to. But there's also homeschooling sports teams. Like there's a group here, they have track, they have cheerleading, they have soccer. I mean, they have all the sports and they compete against the school teams. So,
Wow.
there's just lots of options depending on where you live. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally, totally. So,
Yeah.
Stephanie, how do you support parents with coaching courses? I know you have a community too.
I'm still built. I haven't launched the private community yet. It's
Okay,
something that I'm hoping to do a little later this year. Um, I've just had some things come up that like surgery and stuff that has kind of slowed my pace down for launching some things. So I'm trying to, get things back on track this as we roll into this new year. But I help parents that either are new to homeschooling, wanting to start homeschooling, or even if you have been homeschooling for a while and just maybe they've reached a milestone age and you're kind of not sure what the next steps are, or you just need someone to talk to that's been there and, had experience before. So, I'm working on some other programs right now. Right now I've got a webinar on 7 steps to get started homeschooling. Um, I'm working on one that's about deschooling, something we hadn't talked about, but if you're in any kind of non-traditional educational path, you need to deschool. So I'm going to do a whole thing on that. That's the next one coming out. Um, but I do group coaching. I'm going to be starting that back up again. Also probably in February, um, because it just even talking to other people so you don't feel as isolated. I personally love being parts of groups like that. And so facilitating them is really rewarding for me also. But I just help you like figure out what your what path you want to be on for your family. And it looks different for every family. Um, you might just need a one time, 1 hour call to get things going. You might want to meet weekly for, 2 or 3 months. Just really, I'm just there to help in any way because I wish that I had had somebody like that for me when I started because I had to figure it all out by myself. And it was hard and overwhelming. And I felt kind of isolated for a long time in the beginning because nobody else that I knew was doing anything like that. Um, and so, I like being there as a support, just like really just holding your hand and giving ideas and suggestions just because we've tried lots of different things. And I have access to a lot of resources to point people in the right direction of where to go in their journey. So
That's wonderful because it is so important to have that community, especially
yeah,
if you are, as we were saying, if you're kind of taking action that goes against kind of societal norms
yeah,
and you're getting all these weird looks and questions from people. That's very isolating and
yeah,
can lead you to question, what am I, if I, am I doing the right thing here? So having the sense of community, especially, you know, parents like you who have done this and your
yeah.
kids are quite, being quite successful and fulfilled and empowered and doing well, that's very validating for people who may be
Yeah.
starting that
I
journey.
know
So
that was
yeah,
definitely pivotal in my journey when I found some people that were
right,
doing the same thing, and I realized that, I wasn't on this journey alone.
right.
Because we are meant to be part of a community. Like, we're meant to be a village to help one another, and, everybody needs it. Whether you think you do or not, you need at least one person to be able to talk to.
Yeah, no,
So,
for sure, for sure.
yeah.
Stephanie, where can viewers find you if they're interested in connecting with you for coaching or the community, which will be launched soon, or any
Yeah.
courses, your webinar, for example?
Yeah, so my website is wanderlearneducationalempowerment.com, and that's wander with an A because it's like traveling. Because I also do help people plan travel. Because we travel so much as a homeschooling family that it just kind of was a natural transition. So we've been a lot of different places, and it's a great part of homeschooling. So, and you can find my email on my website. On Facebook, I have a page, Wanderlearn Educational Empowerment dash Stephanie Eige, and my Instagram is Wanderlearn. Is it dot or it Wanderlearn Stephanie Eige? But there's a dot or an underscore. I can't remember.
I
That's
will
terrible.
put everything in the video
Yes.
description, the show
Okay. Thank
notes. I'll
you.
put everything there just to be sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I'm trying to think what else. My I've got my link in bio is on Beacons. It's a new AI thing that just came out, and that's what like where my store is right now. I'm working. Like I said, I've had some setbacks, and I'm behind on where I thought I would be in January. But I'm really excited about the things that are going to be coming out over the next few months. And just I'm ready to share more and help more people because I just want us homeschooling families, just any non-traditional people. I want more of us out there. I want to help people. Like it's just really all I want to do. I just like to help people I want them to feel the sense of freedom and empowerment that I have found because I just think everybody deserves to feel it. And I hate seeing people like that you can just clearly tell that they have an inner wounded child that they need reparented. And I want to be that person to help them do it. So,
Oh, that's so great. No,
yeah.
we need more people like you. So I love hearing it. I love hearing about your journey and how well your kids are doing and how well this has worked out for you. And like you said, helping people just know that they have, they're able to take charge of themselves, that they are
Yes.
able to have a say in their world, right? Like
Yeah.
and that conveying that and teaching that to our kids is also key because
Yeah.
that sense of autonomy, kids need to have that sense of autonomy and that, they should have more and more autonomy the older they get, right?
Yep.
Consistent with their
Absolutely.
development. So yeah, totally support that.
Yeah.
Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm going to put all your information in the video description so viewers can contact you. And I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you. This was such a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you.